Hi, welcome to PR for Radicals. I'm Nancy Brown. Today I want to talk about voting and what it's good for and what it isn't. So to begin with, voting, especially in federal elections, will do virtually nothing to address our most urgent problems. That's because both houses of Congress and the presidency are beholden first and foremost to their corporate interests. What this means is that virtually all the solutions we desperately need, including safe food, non-toxic water, an end to fracking, end to genetically engineered foods, mass incarceration, and more, are virtually untouchable on a federal level. So the risk inherent in voting is that it might make you think that voting changes anything, or that your job is done after that, and nothing could be further from the truth. Although the public generally sees voting as the primary means to influence the political system, history suggests that only mass movements can wrest any meaningful gains from the political class, and even these often fail. I think Obama knew this when he said that once he took office, social movements had to make him do what he promised. To me, that revealed a last twinge of loyalty toward the people he knew he was about to betray. So that's the danger of being a person who puts faith in voting. Now, if you're in no danger of believing that voting fundamentally makes a difference, then I think it's probably good that you do it, just to secure that hair's breadth of difference between the two major parties and their candidates' likely behavior in office. Some people choose not to vote as a form of protest, but I don't really endorse that strategically because politicians never view low voter turnout as some kind of reflection on themselves or on the paltry tray of predigested choices that are offered by the two major parties. Plus, your boycott will be invisible among this huge swath of Americans who don't vote because they've correctly ascertained that it's not possible for them to get representation out of this system. Third-party voters face a unique conundrum in that the system is designed to sideline their candidates through ballot access barriers and exclusion from debates, low media exposure, and all those kinds of things. So people who identify most closely with third parties or want to register dissatisfaction with the two major parties have really no viable path. It's actually hard to know, I think, how much support third parties would have if people felt free to vote their ideals instead of being corralled into the two major parties. Then there's the perennial spoiler question, the idea that a third-party vote might tip the election to a less favored major party candidate. So the question is, should you vote for a Green Party candidate knowing that your vote could result in a Democrat losing to a Republican? We still hear about the Bush-Gore race in 2000, which was decided by a small number of votes in Florida. And although the myth persists that Ralph Nader voters actually tipped the election to Bush, in fact, Democrats tipped the election to Bush. And the spoiler argument assumes that third-party voters would naturally default to one of the two major party choices if not given another option. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think Jill Stein is right when she says that the strategy of voting for a lesser evil every election cycle only results in candidates and elected officials who are more and more evil. But I don't know that it's clear that a vote for a third party is the right thing to do all the time. So you could spend decades helping third-party candidates earn 2, 3, 4% of the vote. And I think what you have to ask yourself at the end of that time is, what have you achieved? In other words, what's the long game? It's true that the power to potentially swing an election from Democrat to Republican, in the case of the Green Party, does pull Democrats to the left during the campaign, but any of those gains are lost once the election's over. And if a Green were to trigger a Republican victory, I think we can be assured that there'd be a lot more blame than introspection coming from the Democratic Party. Democrats tend to believe that Green Party votes are rightfully theirs. So one tangible benefit I see of voting for a third party is to force open the dialogue. The few press appearances we see by third-party candidates are some of the only opportunities voters have to hear alternative viewpoints, or even to know that alternative viewpoints exist. So voting third party can help force open the dialogue, and it can also help third parties meet thresholds needed to gain major party status, which usually means more resources and more airtime. But what we have to remember is that ultimately the long game is not about the voting booth. If Bernie Sanders had been allowed to win the Democratic nomination in 2016, I would have voted for him, but not because I thought he could fundamentally change anything or solve any of our problems. Only because I thought it would buy us some breathing room to continue to build the grassroots movements that we need to generate actual change. The problem is not that people are voting, it's that people are only voting. They go to the polls every election cycle and try to vote for change, and they're continually betrayed. And we saw that again in 2016. So is it a moral imperative that you vote? To me, the moral imperative is that we extract our political system from the moneyed interests that currently run it, and voting will never achieve that. Thanks for watching PR for Radicals. I'm Nancy Brown.